because these are what we're encouraging folks to select among. You could talk about all four. You typically only get about 2 minutes, so that'd be tough to get through all four of them in detail. But these are big concerns that we have and recommendations we have to improving the permit. Number one, top line, you know what? Enough's enough. You should require technology that has the least adverse impact on the environment. In fact, that's one of the arguments against those 4 individual permits that I mentioned that's currently being litigated, is there is a better way, and you should use that better way. I personally, like I did earlier, I'm going to be emphasizing a little bit on ammonia, a little bit of the ammonia pollution, because it's one thing for the industry not to improve. For me, what's particularly egregious in this moment is it making it worse. And so I'll be talking a little bit about that. Monitoring is another big one. The current general permit does not, despite that way of managing waste, require any regular monitoring whatsoever of groundwater or surface water. The only monitoring that is required of either is in the event of a self-reported spill, and in that case they have to do some monitoring of the receiving waters. But one of the big things we've been pushing for a long time, indeed one of the provisions in the more protective permit that the Farm Bureau challenged and is currently not being enforced as a result, was a requirement to do some groundwater monitoring. And that's because, especially over time, and at this point most of these operations have been in existence for decades, the impact on the aquifer can be significant. And to date, they have resisted every single attempt to monitor the impacts that they're having on a significant drinking water source, especially for rural North Carolinians in the eastern part of our state. Record keeping is also important. Sadly, this was another fleeting victory that we had in the last permit. We got them to be obligated to issue a report about how they're actually managing their waste. But the Farm Bureau challenged that, also invalidated, also on appeal. And this is basically, we want them to make sure that they are updating their waste management plans to account for that change in the nitrogen that I was describing a little bit earlier. The basic theory that allows them to get away with this, I mean, I kind of glossed over it as fertilization, that's the theory, but really what they're saying is you're only allowed to apply waste up to the point necessary to meet the nitrogen needs of the receiving crop. And since this is actually making more available nitrogen, what they should be doing is altering their waste management practices. And there are really only 2 choices. You either have more land to apply, because they're commonly using the crops that can uptake the most, because again, this is a waste disposal system. These aren't really agricultural or farm, row crop farms. So that's one big change. And as part of that, I would also note, just the transparency. It's one thing to have records, it's another thing for the public to be able to see them. And too often, in fact, most of the records that are contemplated or required under the permit never leave the operation. They're only